We flew British Airways in an A380 from Heathrow to Washington Dulles. The first part of our stay was in the Sofitel on the corner of 15th and H Streets. This is a very opulent hotel, and we have a large corner room. Washington is a monumental city. One of those monuments is to George Washington himself. Built between 1845 and 1885, the monument stands at over 554 feet. Across the Potomac Tidal Basin is the Jefferson Memorial, dedicated to the third President of the United States. This was built between 1938 and 1943 and was influenced by the Pantheon in Rome. The Lincoln Memorial was built between 1914 and 1922. The World War II Memorial is at the other end of the reflecting pool from the Lincoln Memorial, about halfway to the Washington Monument. It was opened in 2004. On June the 6th, a ceremony to commemorate D-Day was being held here. The District of Columbia World War I Memorial. The Martin Luther King Memorial represents hope arising out of despair. The Franklin D. Roosevelt Memorial covers 8 acres. 4 distinct areas represent each of his terms of office. The Navy Memorial is on Pennsylvania Avenue. Rehearsing for a ceremonial for later in the day. This was on Memorial Day. The Korean War Memorial is close to the Lincoln Memorial. The 19 statues represent a patrol drawn from all the American armed services. The memorial wall contains photographs of personnel and equipment from the war. The Vietnam Memorial is nearby. The statue represents US soldiers of 3 ethnicities. The wall contains the names of over 58,000 dead or missing in action. A lift takes us to an observation floor 500 feet up the Washington Monument. There's the White House, the World War II and Lincoln Memorials, the Jefferson Memorial with the Potomac River behind, and the Capitol at the end of the National Mall. The stretch of Pennsylvania Avenue on the north side of the White House is pedestrianised, and it's possible to get quite a reasonable view of this side of the White House. Next door to the White House is the old Executive Building, where amongst others, the Vice President has an office. A row of 19th century townhouses opposite the White House, and Blair House, the President's official guest house. The Indian Prime Minister is currently in residence in Blair House. Lafayette Park is directly opposite the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue, with its statues of foreigners who helped during the War of Independence. It's much harder to get a clear view of the White House from the south side. Secret Service agents are forever closing paths and shooing you away. Next to the White House on the east side is the Treasury Building. The Secret Service closing the junction of Pennsylvania Avenue and 15th Street to allow a motorcade in. On the corner of 15th and Pennsylvania is the White House Visitor Center in the old Commerce Department building. It has a great model of the White House. The United States Capitol is at the extreme eastern end of the National Mall. The stage is being prepared for the Memorial Day concert. It's anticipated that the scaffolding will be removed before the inauguration in January. Union Station is just a short distance behind the Capitol building. This is the Columbus Fountain. The bell is an oversized replica of the Liberty Bell. Union Station is still a busy railway station, but it now also includes retail and dining opportunities. The former station concourse is now a two-level shopping mall. The stretch of Pennsylvania Avenue between the White House and the Capitol is a great ceremonial route. It's flanked by a number of impressive buildings, and also by the J.W. Marriott Hotel, where we stayed for our second stint in Washington. And this is how close we were to the White House, just beyond those trees on the left. This was the view from our window one Sunday evening, ballroom dancing on Freedom Plaza. From the same window, the top of the Washington Monument, and a plane taking off from Ronald Reagan Airport. Not far from our hotel is this monument to the Grand Army of the Republic. Walking towards the Capitol, the old post office, now being converted into a hotel by Donald Trump. The Department of Justice building. The National Archives building, and in front of it, a simple monument to Franklin D. Roosevelt. This was in fact the only monument that Roosevelt wanted. The National Museum of Art is in a 1930s neoclassical building between Constitution Avenue and the Mall. There is a newer building from the 1970s as well. Inside, the building is very spacious and very well lit. The gallery is part of the Smithsonian Institution, and therefore there is no entry fee. This gentleman is perusing the collection's only Da Vinci. Back on Pennsylvania Avenue is the Newseum, a museum of news. That's a bit of the Berlin Wall. News helicopter and satellite, different ways of spreading the news. The remains of a radio antenna from the top of the World Trade Center. The map shows the degree of press freedom around the world. The view from the museum's terrace. The Natural History Museum is another part of the Smithsonian. A stone statue from Easter Island. The Museum of American History. The Museum of African American History, not open yet. The most popular of the Smithsonian museums is the Air and Space Museum. This is the Wright Flyer, the actual craft that made the first manned, powered, heavier-than-air flight in 1903. This is the Spirit of St. Louis, in which Charles Lindbergh made the first solo transatlantic flight in 1927. This is the aircraft in which Chuck Yeager became the first human to travel faster than sound in 1947. A display of World War II aircraft, including a Zero, a Spitfire, and a Messerschmitt 109. A feature of Memorial Day is Rolling Thunder, where over 300,000 Harley-Davidsons tour around Washington. This was a small group of them the day before, passing our hotel. And on the day itself, the road closures are being put in place for the various parades. Getting around Washington, we found the metro system both economical and easy to use. That's how we got to Alexandria, a city in Virginia, downstream on the Potomac River. Alexandria was founded in 1695. Both George Washington and Robert E. Lee lived in Alexandria at different times. Alexandria is now effectively an affluent dormitory suburb of Washington. The George Washington National Masonic Memorial is near the metro station. Walking around central Washington, you see buildings of various styles and periods from the 19th century onwards. In some cases, an old facade has been retained on a newer building. There are food trucks like this everywhere in Washington. F Street was the first street in Washington to be paved and was once its smartest street. In recent years it has been regenerated. Ford's Theatre on 10th Street was the scene of Abraham Lincoln's assassination. The building has had a checkered history since then, but it has now been restored and is both a working theatre and a museum. Apart from the modern lighting, the auditorium looks much as it would have done on the evening of April the 14th, 1865. The box where the president was assassinated has been set up exactly as it was then. Over the road is the Peterson House, where the dying president was taken. And this is the room where he died the following morning. We interrupted our Washington trip with a 3-day visit to Charleston, South Carolina. We're staying at the Barksdale House Inn, an early 19th century building. It's effectively a B&B and rather quirky. Charleston is the oldest city in South Carolina, and many old buildings are still in use. This is the Custom House. The old market building dates from 1841, and behind it is the historic City Market. Horse-drawn carriage tours are available, and we went on one. The tour takes us through the historic centre of Charleston, past buildings from various periods of the city's history. On foot, we explore a little further afield. Charleston is on a peninsula between the Ashley and Cooper rivers. We're now at Riverside Park, which is on the Cooper River side. These modern houses have been designed to blend in with the old architecture. This is Rainbow Row. The oldest building in Charleston, dating from 1771, the Old Exchange and Custom House. Drayton Hall is about 12 miles up the Ashley River from Charleston. Built in the Palladian style around about 1750 by one of the plantation families. The main family plantation was elsewhere, so this was more of a country seat. This is a multi-person outside toilet. Inside the house, no furniture remains, and the walls are bare panelling. The family that owned the building never modernised it at all. Harbour cruises are popular, and we went on the Carolina Belle. The Ravenel Bridge over the Cooper River has a main span of over 1,500 feet. This is the cruise ship terminal. Passing the historic town centre at the tip of the peninsula now. Fort Sumter was the scene of the first hostilities of the American Civil War. There's a very large Air Force base near Charleston Airport. This is a C-17 Globemaster based there. The USS Yorktown was built during the Second World War and is now a museum. Back in Washington, on our final evening, we took a DC at dusk tour. It starts at the Capitol before dark and visits all the major monuments under floodlights.